Well, we appreciate Caroline asking us every year. We always enjoy this evening. And I think the reason why we're asked to candidate forums is the League of Women Voters is a political organization, but we do not endorse or condone or oppose any candidates or political office. So we are neutral, we're nonpartisan. Well, we're not neutral. We do get pretty hot and heavy in Albany, but here we're neutral. And the two people that are helping me tonight with timing is Lucia Shiori. She has her little timing cards, and Diane Keller. We're going to do the uncontested people first. We will save the rest of you later. So you'll just be sitting there looking good.
Well, it'll be a struggle, but I'll try.
Okay. That's all I can ask.
Okay.
This is the outline that we have had, that we've agreed upon with the candidates. And what we'll be doing is each of the uncontested individuals will have 2 minutes to do an opening comment. They will have questions that you will raise, and please come to the microphone when you have a question. There will be a maximum of 3 questions for each of the uncontested people. And then they'll have 1 minute for closing comments. So that's how we're going to do the uncontested ones. And then when we're done with them, then I'll explain to you how we're going to handle the contested people. And if you don't want to sit up there looking good all along, you can get up. Okay. We'll start, we'll just go straight down, and then next time we'll go straight this way. So Mary Lou.
Okay, I can stand up for this. Hi, my name is Mary Lou Harrington Lawson. As you can see, it just says Mary Lou Harrington there because my name being hyphenated is a little bit long and hard to fit onto a lot of things. I started working in the town of Caroline in 2009. I started as a deputy clerk working with Deb DeAugustine, which many of you may remember. And Deb and I worked along famously together in the tiny little corner in the historic town hall where we would greatly bump elbows, and thankfully she was taller than I and could reach over me and be able to get a lot of things. But Deb taught me the ins and outs of being the town clerk, and after she went down to work in downtown Ithaca as a deputy clerk, I ran for office and was ran uncontested and was the town clerk. And I've been there in the office of the town clerk since 2010. Since being in office, a few things have changed. The hours have been extended, and we're still working on hours that work better for people. As you probably noticed last year during tax season, we extended some hours. We've always tried to do some nights, which was Wednesday night working 1 to 5 at one point, and now 2 to 6, but now we've included Saturdays during tax season just to make it easier for people that can't do the weeknights. It's a job I enjoy immensely. I'm very happy to be in this position. I really like working with my coworker, Christine Wilbur, and the town board members, and I'm very sad to see Don Barber go because I think we work very, very well together. And I'm very happy that Mark Whitmer is going to be working with me. I don't have much more to say except for it's a great job. I'm happy I'm running uncontested because I want to be in this position for another 4 years. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for coming, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this event. I think it's really important to hear directly from the candidates. So appreciate that. So as many of you know, I'm running for Caroline Town Supervisor because I treasure Caroline, and I'm stepping up to do my part to steward and guide the town. I know I will be filling big shoes, should I be elected. And I'm ready to dedicate myself to that task. There's clearly a common community spirit here in Caroline, as evidenced by the active involvement of many of you in the community and in town governance. And that's one of the main reasons that Ann and I returned to Caroline to raise our children here. My qualifications: I've worked together with others on several community activities and town committees. Before I joined the town board, I worked with others in the community to do outreach about shale gas. We were learning about it as we went. That was an important initiative. I've worked on the Energy Independent Caroline Committee, and most notably was our Solarize Tompkins Southeast effort that was very successful, stimulating solar adoption in the area, and that spread to Tompkins County and New York State. That was really a great collaborative community effort that was a success. I've served, or I'm currently serving on the Watershed Committee, working with Don and Barry to stabilize creeks that are threatening town infrastructure. And I'm liaison to the Planning Board, most recently with work on the comprehensive plan. So the hallmark of local government that I discovered here in Caroline is participatory governance. It's a group effort, and that's what got me involved, and that's what I will emphasize as town supervisor. Thank you.
I'm Susan Barr. I'm running unopposed for the judge. And I think that this is not a political situation. We're just looking for someone with maturity and integrity to be the judge of the town. And since I'm running unopposed, I'm just going to get you up to date on what's going on at the county. There's a county committee that's tasked to reduce spending and save money. And one of the ideas they've come up with is to close all the town courts, all the rural courts, and move all the court system into the city of Ithaca. And they are unabashed that this will actually raise expenses rather than lower them. And it's a difficult situation. Things have been said at the committees. Peter's been there that are pretty hard. Somebody stood up and said all the rural judges are incompetent. Somebody stood up and said it's not possible for anyone but a law school graduate to understand law and serve as a judge, which is implying that Judge Phoenix with 40 years still doesn't understand traffic law. But it's pretty clear also from the comments they're making that the attorneys feel like it would be darn convenient if everybody would drive into town, find a parking space, find the courthouse, go through the metal detector, and come to them. It would just make their lives easier, and that's so that's just something that's happening in the town, in the city, in the county, and you should just be aware of that. And this has caused all the rural judges to talk about what makes a judge, and we're talking to each other, and what is a judge? Because I don't think everyone who goes to law school could actually serve as a judge. It doesn't go the opposite way at all. I find that, a lot of my job is kind of sorting through what's going on in someone's life when they come up in front of me. Great many of the speeders think that when I hear their story, I will dismiss their ticket, and that's what they're going for. But we also have just a lot of people that have, it's alleged they make mistakes, but they come to court and they do, they're driving without their license. They were just opportunistic petty theft, a family brawl. And so what we're trying to do in the courthouse is kind of restore their lives. So let's get past what happened. Let's get your speeding tickets resolved, get your license back, get you back on the road, figure out what's going on in your family, get you some help, get things going again. So that's really what I do.
Okay, if any of you have questions for any of the three candidates, please come up to the microphone. That's what I thought would happen. No questions, okay. You have a minute?
We have questions later, after the other three?
No, we're doing questions now.
Just for the contestants.
Just for the uncontested.
Okay. Well,
Because then we're going to go sit in the audience.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Think of one.
No?
Well, I'd like to hear them say more things.
Well, they got another minute coming up now.
Yeah, they have a minute to close.
Do you have a minute to close?
If there's something in particular you'd like to hear, why don't you ask a question? Just come up to the microphone and ask your question.
Okay, so I grew up here. I'm coming back now after being in Europe for 15 years. And I have very fond memories of Brooktondale but what did I know back then as a kid. And one of the things that I kind of heard about via while I was in Europe was all this stuff around fracking that was happening and all the controversy here. And I heard from my parents that, there was a chance that they would come frack in the behind them where I grew up in my house, and that then the well water, who knows what would happen to all that. And I was like, oh my God, better to stay in Europe. They don't have GMOs. They've got some things more in order for the environment than here. But okay, so I ended up coming back, and in the meantime, I've heard that there were people in Caroline who really got active and came out and took some steps in order to try to protect the environment around here, and that's really important to me. So I guess I'd like to know a little more. What is the council? What are you guys doing on that level? And can you fill me in a little bit on the background, how you work together, what this all means, this election, in terms of where what the environmental consequences are for us here in this town?
I think that's going to be addressed with our council persons, which we'll hear about later, but Mark, would you like to say something?
Sure. So, sorry, I was warned about that. So we currently, as you know, yes, there was a large effort in the community to educate everybody about shale gas, what was involved, what were the risks. The town went through a laborious process with public hearings, and I won't belabor all of the political history, but we had, the outcome was a local law banning gas development in Caroline, which is currently in effect. So that is a local law, and since that was passed, the state has decided to not allow hydraulic fracturing. So that's where it stands now, and it could be reversed by the state. It's something that needs to be upheld and supported by local government and the state government. So,
If you'd like to view that local law, it will be online on our website. We are working on our website right now to get that up and going so it looks magnificent. But all the minutes for the meetings and the local law is in my office, so please feel free to come in and stop in and get a copy of that local law. And you're welcome to look at any of the minutes that has to do with the hydrofracking council meetings. So please stop in. Okay?
Other questions? Yes, come to the microphone, please.
Thank you, Kay. Mark, I have a question or two for you. As the chief fiscal officer, or intentional chief fiscal officer of the town, we're all struggling with property taxes. We're all blessed with our school tax bills right now. Can you say something about your plan to lead the town into fiscal responsibility or maintain it? And secondly, can you say something about any intention with regard to land use control? Do I need this?
So as far as financial prudence, I think I've served with Don for 2 years, and he's been a very shrewd fiscal disciplinarian, I feel. He's been very careful with the budget and developing a financial plan. I understand people's concern about property taxes. One of the first people I talked to when I was campaigning was a senior citizen who said, it's a struggle, and the property taxes are something that I really worry about. So I understand that. So I mean, fiscally, I want the taxpayers to get the most for their money, and I would work to make sure that we made very efficient decisions with spending. So, do I have a chance to answer the other question since he asked two questions?
Yeah,
So-
a minute a question.
What's that?
A minute a question.
A minute a question. Okay, thank you. For land use, so I am glad you brought that up. Right now, the planning board is in the process of reviewing the comprehensive plan. And as you know, that sets a vision for the community, for the town. So I think that land use is something that is going to be on our plates. I believe that that development pressures are going to increase in the town. One thing that I heard universally from people from the rural community to the more populated Brooktondale community was, we love the rural character of Caroline, we love it the way it is. And so, personally, I feel, dedicated to helping make that happen. How we do that is a community discussion. And so the comprehensive plan process is ongoing. We're going to be continuing to seek public input. I think that's an important discussion because I think it's a real issue facing Caroline.
Other questions? I thought I saw a hand up.
Yeah, you did. I was gonna ask Mark about the land use, but since you gave him a minute, that's covered. Thank you.
Anyone else, please come to the mic.
Ms. Farr, you mentioned the effort toward consolidation of that branch of county government. Can I ask a question of all three of them? The same question, or? Oh, okay. So from all three of you, have you seen other initiatives toward more consolidation, not having our own community with our own little governance? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I only know about the court issue.
Well, the one that I'm familiar with is I believe this is an issue of consolidations, the Municipal Health Consortium that Don was key in developing. So I know that consolidation is a big issue now. So we're constantly considering ways to make government more efficient and reduce costs.
I agree with Mark. There is things out there where we work with different municipalities on consolidating things. We're doing some things right now with Laserfish, which we're doing with records management, and that's basically working with other communities on different types of programs instead of going out and buying our own single programs and spending exorbitant amounts of money. We're working with other programs through grants and being able to do our records management with the same type of programs and connecting up with the county, so we'll be more accessible for people in the community to be able to access marriage licenses and the minutes and local laws and things like that. And you can do it right through the county website, or you'll be able to do it through our website. So it's working in conjunction with different counties and different municipalities, but it's not in consolidating we're going to connect up with them in the town of Caroline's municipal court or county office or clerk's office is going to be gone. We'll still be here.
Okay, closing comments, and we'll start with Susan.
I just want to make sure everybody notices my name tag. I got this. I was a 4-H leader for 18 years, and this is the pie judge name tag that I'm wearing here. But it works in multiple situations. I just want to encourage everyone to vote. When I arraign people, I get to read parts of the Constitution for them. I'm very proud of our laws, and I'm proud of our court system, and everybody should vote.
I have a prepared comment, and first thing I wrote, don't forget to vote. Local elections really matter, and as a youngster, I thought that big government would respond responsibly to any crisis. And yes, I was thinking of global warming, but that hasn't happened. The problem was precisely identified by Al Gore in An Inconvenient Truth with Upton Sinclair's famous quote, "It's difficult to get a man to understand something if his salary depends upon his not understanding it." Right now, we're transfixed or amused by the 2016 presidential race. It's easy to get caught up with that, hitching one's hopes for the future to a particular candidate. But with the seasoning of my years, I've come to realize that local government is where the action is. Recent events in Caroline and New York State have demonstrated how true that is. I point this out to emphasize 2 points. One is that I will take my position as town supervisor as an enormous responsibility as well as an honor. The second point is for you. Your vote is also an enormous responsibility. I hope you will make your choices based on demonstrated commitment to working energetically and collaboratively on the town board. Thank you.
And I'll repeat and tell everybody, come out and vote. One thing about my position is it should be nonpartisan. I'm here to serve everybody. It doesn't matter what political affiliation you do have. I'm going to serve everybody the same. But after saying that, I want to say as far as like with the board and everybody else, I hope somebody and everybody goes out and votes just with their heart and not with their political affiliation either, because everybody on this panel up here is out to serve everybody, and it shouldn't be based on your political affiliation. This town needs to rally together and be together and look at me as being nonpartisan, look at them as being nonpartisan, and just vote for the good of this community. That's the best way I can see, sitting in my office and seeing everything that's going on, that this town is going to rally, be great, and do really wonderful things in the future. And I want to sit there and be on top of the rock and watch it all happen. So vote for me because I want to stay, and I guess if I vote for myself, I am staying. So anyways, come out and vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those were the uncontested candidates, and if you'd like to sit down, you can.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I understand that we have 4 people running for councilperson, and one is an incumbent. There are 2 seats that are going to be filled. I don't know where Stephen Crispell is. He was invited. He's chosen not to come. For you 3, we have a little bit different amount of times because it is a contested race. So first of all, you'll have 2 minutes for opening comments, 1 minute every question. Questions can be asked of one person. The other people have the opportunity to choose if they want to address it too. And then we have a 2-minute closing statement.
Excuse me, you told me 3 minutes for opening.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I say 2? No, I meant 3. I'm sorry. 3 for opening, 1 for minutes, and 2 for closing. Okay. All right, well, we'll start in the middle with you, Gary. Always that element of surprise.
I'm shocked that I'm going to be expected to speak, but I guess I'll press on anyway. When I first considered running, I looked at this, I looked at what I thought the job description was. I'm an old guy, so I was trained that you don't take the money if you're not willing to do the job, and if you're not qualified, don't apply. So I'm running because I think I'm qualified. Much of the job is managerial, and I spent 20 years as a senior executive doing capital budgets, monitoring budgets, doing contract negotiation, reconciling conflicting opinions, trying to split the baby in many cases, and which is really the essence of a manager. You know, I've run corporations as small as $300,000 a year. I've been in charge of operations that were in excess of $4 million. Our budget falls somewhere in the middle. So I felt that I had the qualifications to do the job. I'm inspired by public service. I always have been. I spent almost my entire career in nonprofits because I thought that public service was important. I didn't starve, but I didn't make the money I could have made running a commercial operation. I thought the value that nonprofits brought was an important thing to do. And so I feel like a way about government as well. There are endeavors that can be effected collectively that can't be accomplished individually. The one thing that working in nonprofits has trained me to do is play very carefully with other people's money. When you run an operation that deals with charitable donations, you are accountable in a way that perhaps government even isn't, although it's more accountable than commercial business. So I felt on a lot of levels, I had the qualifications, I had the perspective, I had the skills necessary to execute this management job. So I applied for the job and decided to run. The other thing I bring to this endeavor is, again, I'm old. I have a sense of context. I can separate the urgent from the important. I can take a long-term view and watch the outcomes unfold across years. When you run a business operation, it is not your responsibility to see that it opens its doors tomorrow. It's your job to see that it opens its doors for the next 20 years. Being able to have a long-term view and understanding the context of your decisions as it ripples out across the years is another important skill that you have to bring to governance, and I believe I have it. So I'm happy for the opportunity. When I left my last full-time job, I'm a consultant now. When I left my last full-time job, I could have moved anywhere. I could have moved where there's sun every day. But I love upstate New York, and I wanted to stay here, in Brooktondale, actually. I love the place. There was no question in my mind that this is where I should be, and it's no question in my mind that's where I want to be. So I'd appreciate your vote. I think I've got the qualifications. I hope you agree.
Thank you, Gary. Irene?
So, thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. And I am the one incumbent that Kay mentioned. I want to thank you for the privilege of serving you for the past 4 years. I came in with, you know, as Gary has described his pocket full of skills, I came in with my pocket full of skills in small business management, working in youth and family services and conflict resolution and community organizing. But honestly, I came to this board as a fist in the air fractivist, no fracking, don't do it here. What I learned is that being a council member, being a representative of the town is very different than activism. I sit in a seat where I am responsible in my decisions for decisions that affect people's lives and people's livelihoods and the future and betterment of this town. It's a very different responsibility than activism, and one I've tried to do responsively and also inclusively. One of the first things I learned when I came on is that there were people who were concerned that they didn't know what was happening with fracking, you know, kind of what you've described, and that people whose lives were going to be affected by this decision didn't know when meetings were, didn't know where meetings were, and so I started the Communications, Information, and Technology Committee, which worked on getting information out through the website, which right now is broken and we're working on a new one, but getting information on a website, getting information out on a listserv, and putting notebooks around the town that also inform people of meetings and minutes, and so that people had an opportunity to stay informed. The CIT committee has also been working for the past several years on trying to bring broadband coverage to the full town. We've had some unusual challenges with that. In the time here, I've also worked on bringing educational forums on stormwater management, on flooding and safety and aquifer protection, and began the Aquifer Protection Committee to work with the New York Rural Water Association on a local law that will protect our water supply, both for the quality and the quantity of water that we've had here. Beyond that, I've had the privilege to work not just within the town of Caroline, but also with municipal officials from around the county in something called the Council of Governments. And I'm pleased to tell you that I have been chosen as their, right now, their vice chair of the committee. And if I'm elected next year, I'll serve as the chair of the Tompkins County Council of Governments. And finally, I just want to finish up, I know I'm a little bit over time, that a commitment that I have is the opportunity that we now have for, in climate change and sustainability, to see the blending of sustainability with economic development. And I've committed myself in the work that I've done outside of the board to various endeavors to help bring those two together and hopefully bring home some new types of economic development to Caroline. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Adam Hilker. I am 31 years old, so I'm definitely by far the youngest one up here. And I'm also a husband and a father of 5 young children. So I think that my experience here is a little bit different than the other people on the panel. I'm looking at this from a much different perspective as a person raising 5 young children who actually are going to local school right now. And so I would say some of the issues are a little bit different. I've lived here in Caroline for 9 years, but I lived right down the road and right down in town of Ithaca on Burns Road since I was born. So I've also worked for family-owned Caroline businesses since 2001. First with Ideal Self-Storage, which is owned by my grandparents, and now for my in-laws. I worked for my father-in-law, Dwayne Scott, and now for my brother-in-law, Caleb Scott, and that's Scotland Yard Group. And so, I mean, everything is pretty much right here in Caroline. I don't go very far out of here. I've also been, the only elected position I've ever had was from 2012, I was elected deacon of Bethel Grove Bible Church, which I was deacon for 2 years. I do believe that communication is a key factor when it comes to understanding the issues facing our town. And that's why if I'm elected as councilman, I'd like to pledge that once a month I'd like to set up in each town center just a time where I'm going to be there just to talk with anyone who's got questions about anything. I don't care what it is. I'm considered a jack of all trades, so you can ask me anything. I'd also like to set up social media pages just to field those same questions and comments, just as something, doesn't even matter what it is. I also think that demographically our town is kind of split between Democrat and Republican, conservative, liberal. It doesn't really matter that way. But lately the town board and pretty much all the local town government has been on the Democrat side. And I do believe that as a conservative, I would like to give the other half of the town a voice on the board to kind of give a new perspective that it hasn't had in some years. So I think that's also very important. And also I'd like to bring to that, to think about protecting property owners' rights and also to help control government spending. And that is all I'd like to say.
In order for us to maximize the number of questions, I do ask all of you to adhere to the time. Unfortunately, if the sign stop goes, you do need to stop wherever you are. I've mixed it up so that everyone will get a chance to answer first and others will be second and third. So what is our first question?
I got a question for Irene. I didn't think I'd be asking you one, but you said that you want to pair sustainability with economic development, and I assume you have some concrete ideas in mind. I'd like to hear some of them.
Sure, so I will let you know, Pete, that they're not my unique ideas and that there's a coalition that's working on this. Actually, there's a coalition of labor unions, environmentalists, local business, and social justice that's working together, the Coalition for Sustainable Economic Development, and we are sort of collectively working on a picture of what that is. I also right now have been asked by the Tompkins County Area Development to be on their Energy and Economic Development Task Force. So I'm working there with a bunch of folks. But I think that there are opportunities as we see more solar development coming in, depending on the scale of the developments for reducing property taxes as actual opportunities for property owners who have a lot of land to use for solar development. I think there's opportunity there. There's also going to be any number of opportunities for job training and development in various energy-related fields.
The question was addressed to Irene, but if either of the other candidates would like to answer it, please do so.
Well, I have no plan, but certainly economic development is something that needs to be on anybody's mind who's operating in government. To the extent that each individual bears a burden of taxation, that is a function of population density. The more people we have in Caroline, the more business that generates income in Caroline, the less burden is going to be on each individual to come up with the total that makes up the town budget. So I don't have anything firm, but I mean, who would actually be against economic development? But it has to be moderated. It has to be moderated by those long-term issues that I mentioned in terms of perspective. They can't be a short-term gain that racks up an incredible long-term price 5 years later. It has to be put in the context of keeping the character of the town as it is. I think that everybody who lives in this town lives here because of the way it is. Nobody moves to a place they hate. So the question is not, economic development. It's economic development moderated by the long-term needs of the community.
Next question.
I have a question for Mr. Hilker. You said that you wanted to offer a more conservative perspective. Is there something that's been voted on recently that you would have liked to have offered a different perspective on, that you could give as an example of how you would have impacted them differently?
I don't believe there's anything in particular recently that has been voted on that I would think differently on right now. It's not. I don't think the point is anything in the past necessarily. It's the things in the future. Just something to give new, fresh ideas, different perspective, to open up debate. It has nothing to do with one side or the other, just a different idea. That's all.
Either of you want to address that question? Next question.
I'd like to follow up the previous question and ask Mr. Hilker, specifically, if you had to vote on the ban for hydrofracking, how you would vote? Would you vote to ban it, or, because you said property owners. I'm just curious if you would expand on what you see as property owner rights and specifically about fracking.
Fracking is now statewidely banned. So, I mean, even if I felt one way or the other, I don't see how it would matter how I felt on the issue.
Let me qualify that. If the state were to overturn it and you had the chance to allow fracking in Caroline, would you?
You're talking about horizontal fracking, right?
Right, horizontal
Okay.
fracking.
All right, well, as you all know, there still is vertical fracking allowed in the state for gas drilling. So if you're talking about horizontal fracking, honestly, I don't really care either way on the issue. I don't really take a strong stance on it because it's banned, first off, so I haven't thought about it in some years. And secondly, I wasn't in the big, long debate about it. And I haven't really made a strong decision either way on that one. I know that sounds very wishy-washy, but I haven't given it a big, strong thought because it is completely banned. And I don't see it changing. I haven't heard of anything changing, so that's why I stand that way I stand on it.
Gary, would you like to address that question?
Well, I think that it's a good place. There's a ban in place. I think that, I hate to keep harping on these long-term issues, but once you inject toxic substances into an aquifer, you can't get them back out again. Aquifer, we talk about, property rights, and I'm a big believer in property rights. America was founded by property owners who were really pissed about paying taxes. I mean, property is the center of the American way. But there are issues that cross your property line. And once they cross the property line, it's not just up to you to decide whether you're going to go forward or not. We all live in community. We need to consider the needs of the community. And I think that fracking, I talked about short-term gain and long-term cost. I think fracking is a short-term gain for the energy companies and a long-term toxic cost to the community. So, flat out, I'm against it.
Sure.
Oh.
I think that what's been said is relatively correct, that the state hasn't actually enacted a ban, but they've enacted some bills that would make it, or some action. They've taken some actions that will make it very hard to enable horizontal hydraulic fracturing. However, there is right now in Tioga County, the county next door to us, a proposal that's being considered by the DEC for fracking with something called gelled propane. Some of you may know it as napalm. It's being requested for permitting right now in Tioga County, and I think that we need to keep our guard up, and you can bet that if they start to look like they're going to allow napalm to drive through our streets and be injected underground, I will do everything I can to stop the state from doing that.
Next question, please.
This question is for Gary.
Okay.
How familiar are you with the program to bring the internet to unserved areas of the town? And if the program were to run into more setbacks, would you work to continue the program?
Short answer is yes, I would work to continue the program. I have sat on the county's committee for broadband extensions since its inception. And that's how I came to sit on the IT committee of the town of Caroline. I came out to do some addressing of public issues on behalf of that committee, and Irene roped me. But the internet is not a luxury any longer. It is an absolute economic and educational necessity for everyone. I think, like electric in the 30s, government has a responsibility to extend these services out into the areas where low population density will not interest the commercial vendors. They're not bad people. They're in it to make money. But now that it's a necessity, we have to see that everyone has it. So I'm all for it. I was a technician for a lot of years. I was an engineer. I understand the issues involved. But I think that taking a pass and creating a full-blown, and this is not hyperbole, a full-blown second-class citizenry who doesn't have access to the internet is not an acceptable course of action.
Either of you would like to address that question?
Sure, I too am very much in support of extending broadband infrastructure and access to high-speed internet throughout the town to the extent that we can. We continue to work on finding ways to get that done. We've run into some challenges with the current contract, and coverage will be somewhat reduced, but we also have some old ideas that we're revisiting as well as some new ideas, and it certainly is a priority. I just want to put out there that also getting better cell coverage is also a concern. And in fact, I've learned just today that Senator Schumer is now taking information from people who don't have good cell coverage. He thinks that the cell companies are ripping people off, saying, you know, their coverage maps are good when they're not good enough. So he's looking to do something at the federal level, and you can expect something in the next few days from the town announcing how you can indicate that you don't have cell coverage.
Next question?
A question for the three of you, okay? Some of us are involved relatively heavily in agriculture, and some of us have participated in the comprehensive plan, and I've even weighed in on some of the comments that some are now addressing. How would you sustain agriculture in the town of Caroline? Traditional agriculture, and everyone thinks of dairy farming. Some of us are not involved in dairy farming, as Irene knows. But I'd be interested in knowing and hearing some examples of how everyone likes the bucolic nature of Caroline. I haven't heard anyone volunteer to step forward and pay my property taxes in order to keep my land open. So is there anything that you are considering to not only sustain but enhance agriculture in our township, and perhaps tie that into some recompense with regard to the tax base? All three, the three of you.
Yes. Adam, you're first.
I would say that agriculture is a very important part of Caroline. Obviously, the farms were here probably a long time before anyone else was, before there was pretty much a town. I mean, the farms are what started down in Caroline. So I would say keeping the agriculture nature is important, but in the same respect, respecting those property owners' rights and letting them decide on how to take it from there. Now, there's already quite a few laws and regulations done by the ag and markets, and also through the health department, that can regulate some of the things to do on each other's land. Also, with the Aquifer Protection Agency that is, I think you guys have started or is going on, that's another way that water is also being preserved in our town.
I really feel I have little qualification to address this issue because I haven't really spent much time studying it. I know that farmers have a very hard time competing. I know that, like most businesses in America, large industrial-based format growing has efficiencies that allow them to sell at a much lower market price, and it leaves the local farmer at a complete disadvantage because they don't have those economies of scale. I'm not certain how to address this. I know that agriculture is very complicated. At the federal level, there's subsidies and not subsidies, and it's a very complicated issue. But I would certainly be open to hearing ideas from those in the business. I'm a big fan of consulting expertise when you don't have any yourself. And I think that certainly the answer to the farmer's plight probably lies at this point with the farmers. And I'd be more than willing to listen to them and listen to some suggestions on how to conquer this. Because
I guess I want to come at this from a few directions. First of all, in regards to the taxation situation, early on, Frank, I was when I first came on, I was very sympathetic to this, and I talked about I sit on my half acre and feel so lucky to live here and get to drive around and appreciate all the beauty for land that I don't pay a penny for, and I felt like that is one of the things that we share in common in this town, and I wondered if there might be a way to make the cost for that a shared cost. And I talked extensively with Jay Franklin to find out if there would be a way to have a cost share for large lands and large view sheds. But unfortunately, there isn't the taxation structure allowable in New York State to do something like that. On a shorter answer, I think that in regards to sustainability, we're going to have to look at very new ways of farming and getting our food. We're not going to be able to get red peppers from California for forever, and I think there's going to be revitalization of farming in this area.
Any other questions?
I think a lot of us have concerns about emergency services in our town, and I wondered what thoughts you each might have on what we can do about that issue.
Irene, you're first.
It's a community issue. We have to look to ourselves to find people who are willing to volunteer. We are this year in our budget allowing, pending our final vote on the budget, but allowing support for some services to be provided for pay over the weekends to give our very dedicated emergency service providers a little bit of respite, but it's a big question, and I think that we need to find ways to cultivate volunteers. I think that we also need to look to other communities and look to perhaps invent some new ideas, working with other communities that also are facing similar challenges as to how do we address this, both for ambulance service and for fire service as well. So it's time for collaboration and new ideas.
I agree with Irene on this one. That it's a very, I would say, definitely a community issue. It's one that I don't think there is a true solution to as of right now. And I know probably all the board members and a whole lot of other people in the town have thought about many different ways to try to confront, to battle this and to figure it out. And as of right now, I think what the town board has done is, it sounds like it could be an interesting way to see if it works. And without more volunteers, there is only one avenue to go, and that is to try what they're trying. So I think so far that's all we can do.
No one's against emergency services. And there's no problem that is so big that it can't be solved by throwing huge wads of money at it. But that's not an option. It's not an option. Taxes are a concern. I hear that constantly. So there has to be some sort of middle ground. If we take the position that, look, it's a private corporation and they got to manage their own affairs, which is, sort of extreme one way, then if it goes under, it goes under. Taking it under the wing of the town as a wholly owned and operated subsidiary is going to be expensive. But as I hate to harp on the old guy, as an old guy who would have to wait 20 minutes for bangs to come out one way, I'm not keen on that idea either. So it's very complicated. I think that the ground that's been struck now, underwriting a professional position for part of the time when they can't get volunteers to cover, is probably a good first step, but I don't think in the long term it's going to be the final solution. And I certainly think that, if a town is supposed to do anything, it's supposed to protect the interest of public safety for its citizens, and it should be a topic that's on the table until this gets resolved. And I'm not sure what that final resolution is going to be, but I certainly like the position that's been taken so far. You did talk. She talked.
Next question. Do we have any questions for these candidates?
Yes, another one.
Okay. Is there anyone else that has a question? Okay.
Since I put Mark on the spot with regard to fiscal issues, Gary, you've mentioned restraint and long-term view. Irene has said that she wants to bring economic development by looking at sustainable items to see if you can enhance things in the community. Adam is interested in making sure he hears from everyone so that no one forgets anyone and anyone's issue. Do you have any specifics about, I mean, what just triggered this was the concern about the ambulance service and the cost it could be. I'm a director at the ambulance, not as active as I'm sure I should be, but a director nonetheless. Can you mention any specifics that you would like to address in order to perhaps look for alternative sources of income to help the town out to keep taxes down, but yet maintain the level of service everywhere in the town that we have enjoyed, perhaps even cutting some service if that's a sadly an option?
I have no concrete suggestions. I can respond that I've looked at the budget, and much of the budget is driven by one single line, and that's road maintenance and road issues. There is not a lot of latitude. I keep hearing the phrase efficiency. Well, you know, numbers are what they are. You know, a ton of salt costs what a ton of salt costs. A plow truck costs what a plow truck costs. There's not a lot of flexibility in terms of cost reduction without diminishing services. And the fact is that any business that resorts to diminishing services over and over again eventually becomes worthless. And I don't think that's a position well, they do, and I don't think that that's a position we can be in the town. As far as other revenue, I've been a fundraiser for about 35 or 40 years. There are grants, there are other opportunities to raise revenue. I'm not sure how vigorously they've been pursued, but they're out there. But because everyone is facing reductions, the competition for that money has gotten much steeper as well. So I'm not sure it's going to be a good solution, but it certainly should be pursued.
Would you like to address the question?
Sure.
Time's up.
Speaking of emergency services, yeah, I think that we always need a balance between, as Frank described, the fiscal responsibility and provision of the needed services. And the governor is making that harder and harder for us to do because of the unfunded mandates that he has not been providing towns the financial support, or counties financial support, to do some of the things that the state is requiring. And that's happening in the face of all kinds of inflation. So some of it is through our pushing for reform in that respect from the governor. Another thing that I will say that I suggested in the board and the highway department took me up on, and I know this is not even a happy thing to brag about for some people, but it costs quite a lot to maintain our gravel and dirt roads. They have to be smoothed and reworked year after year. It's very expensive, much more so, intriguingly enough, than paving. And so I put forward the suggestion that we begin paving our roads, and that will save us some money.
Would you like to address the question?
I definitely agree that that it's a tricky two-way road here, that you can't really take away too many services, and it's really hard, and none of us really want our taxes increased. So it's another one of those very, I would say, nonpartisan community issues of trying to balance, and I think both of them have come up with some good ideas, and I think the board has done a good job trying to balance it as of right now.
Yes, come on.
So our comprehensive plan is about 8 years old, I think, and one of the things being addressed at that time was how should Caroline grow? And at the time, there was a thought that nodal development, that is, new people living, this is an actual growth, say, an increase of 10%. Where would these people live? And the idea of nodal development is that there would be certain places where there would be a lot of development without much development in other places. And Boiseville is actually a very good example of nodal development that has occurred over the last 5 to 8 years. If you were to consider in the next 10-year period an increase in the town of Caroline of 10% over what we have now, how would you think about how that growth should occur, of residential increase of 10%?
Yeah.
How would I say that would occur? I guess hopefully it would be people moving in and either building new places. Similar to Boiseville, I think that is a very interesting place. It definitely is neat to drive by and see all those pretty houses. But I think 10% increase, where and how? I don't know if that is a decision or something that we can really estimate. I mean, if it's grown like organically, as you said, I guess I don't know if 10 years ago if people saw that Boiseville was the place it was going to happen, but it did, and I think that that kind of growth is a very good growth.
Again, not my area of expertise, but to me, it would the moderating factor would be the load on infrastructure. If you're talking about developing an area where there are no roads, no services, I mean, it's a complete greenfield startup, that's going to be fairly expensive and fairly burdensome on the part of the town to run in roads and that sort of thing. If it's an existing area that's going to spread, I think you have to look at the services, the load that they're going to create on the community resources, and by that I mean how many wells are going to be drilled, how many septic beds are going to be installed. I mean, at a certain point, we would have to move to municipal services in order to meet health codes and public health issues and that sort of thing. So I think it depends on where and who. But I will say, at the risk of sounding foolish, that I don't think it should be wholly unregulated. But what that regulation would be, I think, would depend on the proposal. I mean, to a certain point, that's going to be up to the commercial side as to where a developer wants to build it. The town's not going to build it.
So I would differ with the opinion that the Boiseville development is nodal or necessarily ideal. There are some features of it. I know that the people who live there love it, and I have campaigned there quite a bit, and I can see its charm. I understand. But I think there are questions about the amount of those kind of developments that we can support here. It's one of the issues that our Aquifer Protection Committee is looking at, is not only protecting the quality of water here, but also the quantity. How many of those kinds of developments, as Gary said, can we support? In terms of where they develop, we don't have zoning, we don't have a lot of say in that, but I do think that we should be looking towards, at a minimum, farmland protection as a way to identify the areas that are most fertile and most crucial to preserve and protect, and perhaps not see development happen there. I don't know the ins and outs of doing that protection, so I'd need to be schooled on that.
Try not to make this sound like a speech, Peter. There is a tendency everywhere to want to pull the gate shut behind you when you come in. Adam is as close to a native of Caroline as any of the three of you are. I'm not a native myself. But, how do you reconcile that? I mean, you don't like Boiseville, Irene, for some reasons you said, and I take it that you wouldn't prefer sprawl because you want to preserve the view sheds and the picturesque farms and so forth, yet acknowledging that there's going to be population growth, which at least, Gary, I heard you stipulate that, you got to do something. And there seems to be something, to me, faintly distasteful about the idea, well, I'm here now, so I'm going to go pull the door shut behind me, ain't going to let anybody else in. So I would like you to address that. And then real quick, if I can ask a follow-up question also. I want your opinion on a suggestion, which is that you're looking for ways to help compensate the farmers, Irene, and you said that you talked to the county tax assessor and some other people, and there's nothing in the structure that really allows, other than the current level of agricultural exemptions, there's nothing really that allows these guys to be compensated for providing the view shed for those of us who live on half an acre. One way that a guy can keep his farm is maybe by selling a few lots off it down near the road and bringing in some big bucks. And of course, that has the old view shed implications again, and it has the implications about where are people going to live. So primarily you, Irene, because you seem to be the most strident on this, but I want to hear everybody's opinion on those two questions. The pull the door shut behind you, where are people going to live, and the trade-off between preserving intact these beautiful picturesque farms and selling off the roadside lots. Thank you.
I don't at all see myself as advocating closing the door shut behind me, Pete, and I'm not quite sure where you got that from. I'm just saying that in my opinion, the Boysville development does not fit the definition of a nodal development, in that nodal developments are typically near services, and Boysville is not near services. Near enough to have a walking kind of community, and it doesn't. It's a community unto itself, but it doesn't have services and still needs transportation. So in that regard, it doesn't fit a nodal development. And again, I want to reiterate that we do not have zoning in this town. That it's not anything other than if it comes forward as part of the mandate of the comprehensive plan. It's not something that I don't think the board could just undertake on its own without support from the community. And so I think that you're fear-mongering and saying that we don't want to put houses here or there. I'm not saying any of that.
Adam?
One of the things I would say about the Boiseville is that that has grown. I mean, when it first started, it was just on the one side of the road, and it was that way for quite a while. And I think that one of the reasons why it has grown is because it had a big demand for that kind of place, and people love it, and I think people love that kind of thing here in Caroline. In a way, Brooktondale itself is similar to that, except for it does have more services there existing, and I think that now that we actually call it Boiseville, it almost makes it sound like its own little village, and so that kind of gives it its own little character. I think that is sort of like the town of Caroline. We already have Speedsville, we have Slaterville, now we have Boiseville and Brooktondale. I don't think there's a big difference between all of them, and I think that growing the town has obviously been in our past and should be in our future for that one.
Well, I think it's disingenuous for anyone to say that they're looking for economic growth, but they don't want anybody new to come in and live. I don't think that's, if I implied that in some way, I certainly didn't mean to. I think that growth is necessary, but I think, again, we have to examine it in terms of net gain. You know, if growth is going to benefit the developer and the town's going to be stuck with the bill down the road for increased traffic, increased plowing, increased this, increased that, then a private individual has benefited from the taxpayer, and I don't think that that's right. I think that growth is important, but every town, I'll use an analogy, every town is organic. And in organic systems, when you have wild, unregulated growth, we call it cancer. So I think that at some point we're going to be, and I'm not sure what it will be, but I think at some point we're going to have to say development is acceptable here, but we want to keep the farmland, we want to keep agriculture. I mean, there's a lot of issues that revolve around agriculture in an ecosystem that have nothing to do with economics. So I think that although nobody wants to talk about regulation, I think sooner or later it will be smart for us to consider it.
Hi. So there have been a number of comments and questions dealing with property taxes and how we're going to keep pastoral views and that type of thing in the town and how we're going to share that tax burden. I would like to share with everyone here that New York State has a law, and finance law, Section 54, which says that 8% of its income tax revenue is supposed to be shared with local governments. For the 2015 budget, that amount was 0.75%. The town of Caroline has been receiving the same amount from the state for revenue sharing for the last 22 years with no increase. And so my question to the candidates, what will you be doing to advocate for the residents in the town of Caroline to get our fair share of New York State revenue brought back to the town of Caroline?
Gary? Gary?
Well, sadly, because I don't relish this, I reckon it's going to mean going up to Albany and making noise. The word lobby is somewhat distasteful, but it's how things get done in the political system. And I certainly think if there is a statutory indication that we are supposed to be receiving a certain amount of money and we're not getting it, that there's certainly recourse to public opinion, there's recourse to agitating when the state Senate and the state Assembly come up for election, to press those folks to honor the letter of the law, and failing that, I'm treading on dangerous ground here. But if there's a law that is not being followed through, that is what the courts are for, and courts aren't cheap. But if you're talking about being robbed of 7.25%, if we're getting 0.75 instead of 8 every year, after a while, you're talking real money. It's worth fighting for.
Irene?
I love it. I think that's worth looking into, whether there could possibly be an Article 78 proceeding to require the state to do that. I think that sounds pretty great. I think that activism is needed. We've been certainly the Association of Counties has taken a lead role in that. The Association of Towns, not as much. We've tried to push them forward on this, continue to do that, continue to work with Barbara Lifton's office and Senator Seward's office. Honestly, it takes all of us. It's going to take all of you being in touch with Albany too. They don't, but you're right, Don. We do need to have a major grassroots movement on this because it's strangling all of our towns.
A couple things on this one. What is that? I don't know. What is that total amount? I mean, if 8% is 50,000, which I don't think it is, then possibly fighting for it may cost more than it's worth. Now, I don't necessarily say that could be, but if it is a substantial amount, then definitely fighting for getting that is definitely a priority. But I think everything sounds good. That's something I haven't heard of yet, so it's definitely something that I think the whole town should be involved in and angry about if it has to, because that is, like you guys said, basically stealing from us. So that's all there.
Well, I think we'll go to,
One more.
okay.
Real quick.
We've been sort of hinting and shuffling around it, so I'm going to say the Z word, zoning. Please, a brief statement, the circumstances under which you would support zoning, or a flat statement that you never would, never in the foreseeable future.
I would not support zoning. I believe that we already have several regulations throughout the health department and other agencies and things around our area that have already limit what you can do on your land to protect our neighbors and our water, and we're working to better protect our water. So I think that zoning in town of Caroline is a no for me.
I never say never. I think that this is really going to be a matter of circumstances. Probably it may even come down to a crisis, although I couldn't project what that crisis would be. But I think to say that we would never be in circumstances where we would have to control unregulated growth, or whatever the issue comes up, that we wouldn't turn to the rule of law as a solution, would be imprudent. It would be a foolish statement to make. So, if the circumstances demand it, I think that government should use every tool it has, if the circumstances demand it. On the other hand, creating regulations just because it's recreationally fun is not sensible either.
I think, Pete, I used the Z word before you did. tonight. I and I used it in reference to the fact that it would need to be, first off, a community mandate through the comprehensive plan. In instituting zoning, it has to be based on evidence that this is what the community wants, and the way that we collect evidence of what the community wants and the vision for itself is through the comprehensive plan. So if and when there becomes a mandate and a desire from the town that they want to see zoning, I think I would be open to understanding why there was that perceived need and considering whether I thought that was in the best interest of the town. But I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, we're ready for closing.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was wondering if the candidates have read the comprehensive plan and what they think of it. I know Irene has.
Irene?
I have, and I think it's a solid document. I think it has need to be refreshed and reviewed and renewed. I think, in particular, it's missing elements about sustainability, and I'm excited to know that that's being considered within the review process that's underway. But I think that it set forth a vision that's, at the time, was really what the town aspired to. I was part of the discussions around whether or not the town accepted this vision, and there was very, very strong support of the people who came out. And I know that it was done and conducted in a way that took in the opinions of many, many different sections of town and different subsets of populations, and it was very well done, and I think it's being very well conducted again.
Might be very short on this one. I have not read it.
And I agree with him. I have not had a chance to read it. I only have so much memory left. If I'm elected to office, I will study it diligently, but right now I didn't feel like devoting that much brain power to doing an analysis. My apologies, but it's a long document.
Okay, our closing comments are 2 minutes, and the first person will be Gary.
Well, hopefully I made my case. I think, at the risk of sounding narcissistic, I think I'm competent to execute the duties. I think that I have the skills necessary to do a good job. I think I have every opportunity to benefit the town. I am much more of a pragmatist than an ideologist. I think that really it requires pragmatism and compromise to move any enterprise forward, and that's the spirit in which I govern. So I hope that you all will come out on the 3rd and push the lever for me. You won't regret it.
Irene?
Sure, I think I don't have 2 minutes worth of anything to say other than thank you all for your attention and your questions and your concern about Caroline's future. It's what holds us all together. We have differences from time to time. I think one of the things I'm most appreciative in this town is that even when we have differences, we work hard to work through them. And you can count on me to continue to do that. I think you could count on actually any of us here to work to do that. And I really, campaigning, you get to know a town pretty differently. And what I get to know most of all is the people and what they care about and why they stay here and what makes Caroline their home and what they want to see it be. And it's an honor to be entrusted with that responsibility, and I hope that I've done a good job and that I earn your vote again this time around.
I'd like to say that thank you all for coming here tonight, and that it was my first time at anything like this, so it's very different for me. I'm not used to this kind of situation, and this is my first time ever running for a political office, so that's obviously something new to me as well. It's been very interesting and fun too. So I think a new perspective, not necessarily a new perspective, but at least putting like I said in the beginning, that all the people on the whole government right now on Caroline is all on the Democrat side. Now, I'm not saying that very many of the issues are partisan, but to give a different perspective on it is an important thing for any aspect of any government. And I think that I can do that, as well as just bring, I don't know, maybe younger energy, a different perspective from a young family to the team here. Thanks.
Thank you for the candidates to come and answer the questions, present your ideas and your views. Thank you all for coming tonight and asking them questions. I think one of the most important things to the league is that we have our voters informed. So I hope that you have gotten your answers and you're ready to make your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.